And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to yet another incredible installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and vacuous forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly and permanently ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. That's right. We've got one step until the weekend, and it's a fantastic day on the program, my friends. I meant to start out the program yesterday with this, but I totally forgot. We had a whole bunch of different stuff happening on the show, and so I just spaced it. But yesterday, and if you've noticed, if you're watching Cowboy State Politics Live from the website, you'll notice that I have my Texas Rangers hat on, and I also have the Oakland Athletics hat down here in the corner. And the reason for that is, well, yesterday actually, was a big day in baseball history. In fact, in 1991, Nolan Ryan pitched his 7th no-hitter. And on the very same day, Ricky Henderson stole his 939th base. And so, in honor of yesterday's day in baseball history, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happened too, I've got a couple sound bites for you. So here's the first one. This is Ricky Henderson stealing his 939th base.
The A's having come from behind a 1-0 deficit. Ricky goes, a pitch taken, he's going to have it. He does. No contest, steals third base, jerks the bag from its moorings, and folds it aloft, representing number 939. Ricky pounds it with his left fist, hands it to equipment manager Frank Sinchek, who gives him a big hug. There's Ricky's mom.
Again, talking about the game. Yeah, so there's 939th. And like Ricky Henderson and Nolan Ryan, they are kind of tied together in baseball history. It's one of those weird oddities of baseball. But it was also, let me back up. So on that same day, Ricky Henderson stole number 939th. Nolan Ryan pitched his 7th no-hitter. Here's that soundbite.
What is he saying? If I could just get one more across the plate, if I could get him to swing and miss, and that would be it. Crowd's already going nuts. Can you imagine what they're going to do if he gets this?
I think you'll have a traffic jam around the stadium.
There it is! All right! You watched it live right here. Look at Nolan, the 7th no-hitter of his career, and he did it with a strike, his 16th strikeout. What a thrill.
What a moment for him and for all Ranger fans tonight.
The moment.
See, 7th no-hitter. Amazing. And to top it all off, and this didn't happen on May 1st of 1991, but Ricky Henderson was the victim of Nolan Ryan's 5,000th strikeout. Amazing. I mean, these two guys are tied together in baseball history. And as we all know, I'm a baseball fanatic. So, pretty cool. And so we're going to cover that on today's program. We got a lot of stuff. There's a lot of other stuff going on today's show. And so we're just going to get into it. And, it's interesting because the stack of stuff, it never stops growing. And it doesn't really matter how much you try to keep up with it. There's always stuff to add. So I thought what we'd do on this morning's program is we'd just start out with a little bit of humor. And you gotta keep it kind of light around this place, because if you don't, I mean, you'll have the gloomy black rain cloud all the time, and you never know what's going to happen. So just a little bit of humor. The White House has officially said that Joe Biden has only made 148 mistakes in 2024. 148, and this is from it comes right from the White House. And I quote, the White House communication staff has had to correct President Joe Biden's public remarks at least 148 times since the beginning of 2024. A review of the official White House transcript shows. The White House releases an official transcript anytime the president gives a speech or takes questions. Communication staff frequently correct, add to, or alter Biden's official remarks in order to either bring them into compliance with official White House policy or, in some cases, reality. The Daily Caller analysis showed in several cases, official statements had to be changed to convey the exact opposite of what Joe Biden actually said. I mean, really? I mean, how would you like to work for this guy?
Throw it into that summer depression.
Or this guy?
Elect me. I'm in the 20th century, 21st century.
Or this guy?
Beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer. It is defined. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why it's happening.
It's amazing having to work with that guy each and every day. So back to the Daily Caller. Through 118 statements, speeches, and chats with reporters spanning from July 1st to April 24th, the White House has officially updated its transcript with corrections to what the president said out loud at least 148 times. Some of the modifications included corrections to names, dates, titles, and organizations. Others change verbs and modify the meaning of the president's statement entirely. Words that the president didn't say or should have said, according to the White House staff, also have been added to the transcript. So really, the transcripts don't matter at all about anything. And I mean, there's no doubt that the president is just absolutely inept and off his rocker. And the truth is, like, every time the president gets up to speak and opens his mouth, gibberish comes out.
My dad used to say, a job, Joey, give my words to a trade. A job is about a lot more debate than it's about your dignity.
I mean, the guy doesn't have any idea what he's saying, and it's absolutely amazing, my friends. But according to the White House, he's only screwed up 148 times. Quote, I've always believed they've got it all wrong. America is rising. We've had the best economy in the world, which we do. The White House transcript of Biden's April 17th remarks on his new initiatives to protect U.S. steel and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania read, we have to be honest. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must, and in the official White House transcript, the word defended is crossed out because it would have said the threat to democracy must be defended. And instead they put in defeated. Another State of the Union excerpt reads, in at least one case, the White House put out a transcript that falsely portrayed what Biden said out loud. At an event last week, Biden seemingly read the word pause off to his teleprompter. But the original White House transcript of the president's remarks did not include the word pause. In other words, it didn't include anything of what he said. But remember, Joe Biden has only been wrong about 148 times. I mean, really, how could you fault him for that? I mean, on this program, I'm right almost 99% of the time. And the truth is, it's probably a little bit higher. I just haven't checked the data lately. I haven't compared the numbers, but I know that we're really close to 99% of the time. In any case, the Biden White House is absolutely off the rocker. They have no idea what they're doing, and there's no way that they could ever possibly change any of that. So, in any case, Biden's off his rocker. We started with a little humor, and let's continue. Now, a little Wyoming news. There's this guy that frequently writes into the Pravda on the Platte, the Casper Star Tribune, and his name's Randy Vlock. And he claims to be a Republican, just like all these people in the Wyoming legislature claim to be a Republican when they're really not. But he's taking issue with a couple of the things that Representative Jeanette Ward said. And I quote, and this came out in this morning's edition of the Red Star. Red Star and the Pravda on the Platte, those are the two, I mean, they're the same paper. I just have different names for them. Quote, a few comments on Jeanette Ward's column, innocent beings should never be tortured or killed. First, Ward opens her essay with an attempt to garner sympathy from the reader, for which she claims are frequent attacks on her for not being a Wyoming native. Republicans love to play the victim, don't they? And by the way, this Randy Vlock guy, last I heard, he claims to be a Republican. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth. Ward goes on to claim an intense love for Wyoming and its people. Let's look at how she demonstrates that love. In the 2023 legislative session, she sponsored several bills. And he goes on, the very first one he attacks is her ban on House vaccine and mask mandates. So that was House Bill 66. Now, as we all know, as people who can read, unlike Randy Vlock know, that bill would have prevented an employer from forcing you to stick a needle in your arm. Now, Randy Vlock would like to claim that employers have dominion over all of their employees, no matter who they are, really. He just wants to claim that employers can force you to do whatever they want, which, of course, is ridiculous. The second thing he goes after is what he calls arbitrarily labeled pornography. The truth is, in Wyoming libraries all across the state, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is absolute pornography. That's frankly, a lot of it you wouldn't see in Hustler magazine, and yet it exists in public libraries. And I mean, there's no question that it's pornography. We talked about this on the morning show this morning, that every community in Wyoming has a statute or an ordinance that talks about decency. And in this case, in the case of these books, there is no decency. So what Jeanette Ward's bill would have done is remove the exemption for librarians. See, right now, police and librarians and teachers, they have an exemption about dealing with offensive images so that they could effectively do their job. But a lot of libraries have used that exemption to inject pornography books into the children's section of the library. And I know this because when I first started covering this story, it was about this book called Lawn Boy. It's a horrible book, and I didn't order it. I haven't read the whole thing. All I did was read the little sneak peek on Amazon. And I read it, and it's the most horrible thing that I've ever read in my entire life. It was a description of two fourth grade boys having sex. And I had to immediately pray to get the image out of my head. And so I called my lawyer, and I'm like, hey, lawyer, can I read this on my program? And I read it to him, and he's like, absolutely, under no circumstances are you to read that ever on your program. You'd be guilty of dissemination of child pornography on a public broadcast. But these books are apparently okay to be in Wyoming public libraries. And to add on top of that, if that weren't bad enough, I was at a Sheridan City Council school board meeting, District Number 2. This was about a year ago, and a dad gets up and he pulls out one of these books and starts reading from it to the school board. And he was told, excuse me, I'm sorry, sir, you can't read that. That's inappropriate for this meeting. To which he replied, so wait a minute, it's inappropriate for me to read to a bunch of adults, but it's absolutely appropriate to be in the library. I mean, the hypocrisy here knows no bounds. It's absolutely shocking. But anyway, here is what I wanted to get to really in his article. Oh, and by the way, he says, Randy Vlock says that we don't need the What is a Woman Act. We have to have respect for transgender people. But here is the most shocking part of Randy Vlock's article. Third, quote, Ward's comparison to the torture and killing of a young wolf in the state earlier this year to abortion is absurd. Now, listen to very carefully what Randy Vlock says. Abortion is not torture and it's not murder. It's a medical procedure. The decision to have an abortion should be made between a woman and her doctor and no one else. Despite Ward's inane labeling, Wellspring Health Access provides more than abortion services. I don't really care if they clean your toenails at Wellspring Health Clinic or whatever it's called. They kill babies. And let's just be honest about what that is. Anybody that wants to have a debate about whether an unborn child is a baby or not is welcome on this show. And we'll debate it. If Randy Vlock wants to come on this show, we'll talk about abortion. Absolutely. I have no compunction about that at all. Let's go, Randy Vlock. And I'll prove to you that an unborn child is a baby. And so, he's absolutely advocating for the killing of babies. And when he says, well, they provide a lot of other services. I don't care what they provide. If you're killing babies on the premises, we shouldn't have anything to do with it. It's absolutely murder. There's no way of getting around it. And I am absolutely shocked that the Pravda on the Platte printed this. So it's just another example of Wyoming people, Wyoming Republicans that claim to be a Republican, but they're really not. They're just shills for the Wyoming left, and they really ought to go join their own party, the Democrats. Well, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about another one of Biden's gaffes. The guy just continues to lie. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, entertainment, and commentary than on Cowboy State Politics Live. The program you're listening to right now. And frankly, why would you want to look anywhere else anyway? Let's be honest, only a liberal redcoat commie would do that. And if you want to listen to my podcast, you can find it at cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. If your name is Sleepy Joe Biden and you can't remember if you put socks on this morning or not, well, I can't really help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president of the United States. And now, back to the program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network and at cowboystatepolitics.com. And actually, I got to apologize for the station. I'm still wading through all the bugs in this whole system. Thought I had it figured out. I guess I don't. But one cool thing on the YouTube broadcast is I can look at comments from the audience. And so I had a question just a minute ago. Tell us about this baseball that's on my desk. Really, there's nothing all that special about it except where it came from. So I wasn't always a Texas Rangers fan, of course. I've always loved Nolan Ryan. How could you not? My team for the longest time was the Oakland A's, but I kind of lost favor with them after Ricky Henderson retired. He was my guy when I was growing up. So last summer, so back to baseball. So last summer, Christine and I took a trip to Dallas. That was during my appearance on the Chad Prather program and my visit to Blaze Studios. Yeah, I got to sit in Glenn Beck's chair and look at his microphone. Anyway, we got tickets to the Texas Rangers game. And it was during what they so-called Pride Month, and I was sick to death of all the Pride stuff. And we walked into Texas Rangers Stadium, Globe Life Field, and not a single Pride flag anywhere. Not one of them anywhere. No patches, no nothing. In fact, we walked up to the beer cart, and of course, Christine and I don't drink. And so I asked the beer lady, "I'm like, do you have any non-alcoholic beer?" And she says, "Yeah, we've got Bud Zero." And I kind of grimaced, and she goes, "Look, you're at Texas Rangers Stadium. There's no politics here. This is just baseball. You want a beer or not?" And I'm like, "Oh, cool. All right, so I'll have it." Well, anyway, I enjoyed it so much. And in fact, that game made me remember how much I loved the game of baseball. There was no politics. It was just baseball. And so I didn't catch a baseball in the crowd, but I did get one from a vendor up around the stadium. And so now it's on my desk, and it's not signed or anything. It's just a baseball. And I just love it. So there you go. There you have it. All right. So continuing on with the program, there's zero evidence, and this is from the Daily Wire also, but there's zero evidence that Biden ever drove an 18-wheeler. Absolutely none. And yet he continues to talk about it all of the time. In fact, that's where the whole Big Mama thing came from. But according to the Daily Wire, President Joe Biden has been slammed for telling yet another lie, and it's one he's repeated several times after claiming that he used to drive an 18-wheeler truck. That's a quote from him. At a speech in Florida at Hillsborough Community College in Tampa Bay, Biden made the false claim about his biography, telling the crowd, "I used to drive an 18-wheeler." The RNC's Zach Parkinson, who is also the director of RNC Research, posted the video on X of Biden and said, "There is zero evidence that Biden used to drive an 18-wheeler. The extent of Biden's trucking experience is that he rode in a truck once for one night in 1973. He made sure to return home by plane, though," he added, sharing a newspaper clip of Biden's ride in the truck. Reminder, there is zero evidence that Biden used to drive one. Never did, never happened. Another lie coming out of Sleepy Joe's mouth. And this is from, like I said, it's from the Daily Wire. And quote, "Biden's always been a chronic liar. Now, coupled with his cognitive decline, he's a national security risk, according to the official account of the RNC Research. CNN ended up fact-checking the claim, too, and admitted it is fictional, despite the repeated times the president has used the debunked tale. Biden's claim remains untrue. There is zero evidence he ever drove an 18-wheeler," the outlet reported. But it's just another example of how much our president lies about everything. Absolutely inexcusable. There's no excuse whatsoever that the president of the United States can lie. I just kills me each and every time. Now, President Trump right now is going through the hush money trial up in New York, another bogus trial. And if you pay any attention to any of the news reports, except coming from Fox, they'll tell you that the whole trial is based on a charge that doesn't exist. And I was on my way back from Cheyenne. I was listening to Alan Dershowitz explain this. I think it was Alan Dershowitz. Anyway, he said that campaign finance law is really, really, really complicated, which is why it ought to be left up to the experts. But here's what I understand how that works. So, a campaign expenditure cannot have the possibility of being used as any other expenditure a private citizen would use. So, for example, if you were to buy a suit for example. Let's say you've got an upcoming event and you want to look good for the crowd. You go buy a suit. Well, that suit is not a campaign expenditure because people buy suits all the time, and you're probably going to use that suit later on. It's not a campaign expenditure. The only thing that is a campaign expenditure is something that is explicitly for that. Now, private individuals, businesses, all sorts of people pay hush money payments to keep people quiet. Non-disclosure agreements are very, very common in all sorts of business. In fact, political parties use them too. In Wyoming, if you're part of the state central committee, that is, if you're a chairman or a committee man, state committee man or state committee woman, you sign a non-disclosure agreement because sometimes there are some things that aren't to be made public. But none of that is against the law. And in fact, paying somebody off to shut up isn't against the law either, which is exactly what happened here. So when the FEC investigated the Stormy Daniels hush money payments, they declined to prosecute because it's not a crime and because it wasn't a campaign expenditure. It was a payment to keep her quiet for whatever reason. People do that all the time. See in lawsuits, how lawsuits are kept confidential. Same type of thing here. Not an election expenditure whatsoever. And so Alvin Bragg is basing his charges off of a crime that didn't happen. It's not a crime. So he's making up a crime to use that in state court and then prosecuting Trump for it. So it's absolutely bogus. But there's another case that's going on, and this is the classified documents case. So a really interesting article that I meant to get to last week, but never did. It's entitled, "Here are the 3 most shocking discoveries just unsealed in the Trump classified documents case." And I quote, Judge Eileen Cannon unsealed a trove of documents last Monday, appearing to reveal a coordinated federal effort to target President Trump. Judge Eileen Cannon unsealed a trove of documents Monday that appear to reveal a coordinated effort with the Biden administration to target Donald Trump with political prosecution after he left office. Special counsel Jack Smith and other federal prosecutors in President Biden's Department of Justice indicted Trump in June of 2023 for allegedly mishandling classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago home. The indictment followed an unprecedented raid on the former president's home the prior summer. President Biden also retained classified documents after leaving the vice presidency, yet he was not charged because prosecutors said they believed he would present himself to the jury, as he did during our interview with him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. So I guess if you have a bad memory, that gets you out of crimes. But here's the first big thing that was revealed from Judge Eileen Cannon. Number one, the DOJ allegedly threatened the lawyer's judicial nomination. Okay, Jay Brad, the special counsel's lead prosecutor, allegedly threatened a Trump staff member, Walt Nauta's attorney, Stanley Woodward, with sabotaging his judicial nomination to the Superior Court of the District of Columbia if he could not get Nauta to turn on Trump. So in other words, they're extorting a lawyer for President Trump. Never mind that you have attorney-client privilege. Apparently that doesn't matter here. But so there's extortion. Number 2 on the list is the White House has allegedly been involved from the very beginning. Now, who would have seen that coming? I mean, really. And I quote, following Trump's departure from office, the National Archives and Records Administration began to work with the White House Office of Records and Management on exaggerated claims related to the records handling under the Presidential Records Act. A motion to compel discovery from Trump's attorneys states. So, in other words, the White House has claimed over and over and over that they're not involved in this, when very clearly they are. Not only that, they've tried to extort Trump's attorneys. Number 3 on the list, Trump's security clearance allegedly was retroactively revoked. Think about that. Former presidents have security clearances, and Trump's was revoked retroactively. Listen to this. Biden's Department of Energy, who also allegedly revoked Trump's security clearance after Smith indicted Trump in June 2023, according to a 2024 motion to compel discovery from Trump's lawyers. The Energy Department's Central Personnel Clearance Index and Clearance Action Tracking System and Active Q clearance for President Trump, the unredacted motion states. The DOE's Assistant General Counsel then, quote, instructed the relevant systems be immediately amended and promptly modified to reflect the terminated status of President Trump's clearance, the filing states. So the DOJ, the White House, and the National Records Office, they've been colluding from the very beginning. Amazing, my friends. Now, we're about to take another break, but I have a question to ask you. How much do you think that Ford is losing on each and every electric vehicle that they build? Do you think it's 5,000? Do you think it's 1,000? $100? What do you think? All I can tell you is that they're losing a tremendous amount of money on each electric vehicle that they produce. And after the break, I'm going to tell you about it. It's spring in the Cowboy State, or as Albert Somers likes to say, spring-ish. Time to get the motorcycle out of the garage, time to go up the mountain, time to get outside and tromp around. And when you're doing that, you still want to make sure that you take care of your feet. The best way that you can do that is order a pair of Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. I know, your mama always told you that wool socks are only to be worn during the winter. But times have changed, my friends. The Kenai boot socks from the Buffalo Wool Company will not only keep your feet nice and toasty warm, they'll keep them cool and dry in the summer. Trust me, these are the most incredible socks that you're ever going to put on your feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. You're definitely not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Watch out. Cowboy State Politics and the Independence Network are only going to get stronger. With great programs like Just Blame Joey, The Ramble Route, The Hair Affair with Christine, and Wide Right Turn. Watch out. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson on Cowboy State Politics live on the Independence Network and simulcasting. I'm resurrecting that word. I just made an executive decision. Simulcasting to the Cowboy State Politics website. Now, again, having some technical difficulties one more time, but pardon my dust. This whole thing is new, and it's always a little bit of tricky situation trying to get things figured out in the studio. Anyway, before the break, I asked you a really important question. How much do you think Ford is losing on each and every electric vehicle they build? Well, it's not 5,000. It's not 10,000. It's not 20,000. Listen to this. According to CNN, and I quote, Ford's electric vehicle unit reported that losses soared in the first quarter to $1.3 billion or $132,000 for each and every single one of their 10,000 vehicles it sold in the first 3 months of the year, helping to drag down earnings for the company overall. Ford, like most automakers, has announced plans to shift from traditional gas-powered vehicles to EVs in the coming years. But it is only the traditional automaker to break out results of its retail sales. So for every single vehicle they sold EV, they're losing over $100,000. Holy cow, my friends! The idea when you're in business is to make money, not lose money. And in this case, Ford is just flushing it down the drain. And all of it is because of this dumb pipe dream of reducing carbon emissions, which, by the way, carbon emissions are plant food. It's exactly what they are. Carbon dioxide is a key component in photosynthesis. So if you want to reduce carbon emissions, it's much cheaper to just go plant a couple trees than it is to produce an electric vehicle, which, by the way, what powers an electric vehicle is electricity, which is generated most of the time by coal. This whole electric vehicle thing is the biggest boondoggle I've ever seen, and it's an expensive one, too. I'd like to see how long Ford can continue to produce these electric vehicles at a loss of $132,000 a vehicle. Absolutely incredible, my friends. Only a moron would continue to do this. So, the nation's border crisis, as we all know, is just getting worse and worse and worse. Essentially, the Biden administration has just thrown the doors open and allowed anybody who wants to come in. There are many communities across the United States who have seen, small communities even, have seen illegal immigrants being dropped off in their communities. This is almost a daily press event. If you pay attention to the news and just look at a couple different news sites, you'll see all sorts of stories. And now we're thinking about, or I guess not thinking about, we're planning on bringing Palestinians into the United States and dropping them off into our communities. Think about that. Palestinians, folks who have sworn under the charter of Hamas to destroy Israel and the United States. Absolutely incredible, my friends. In an article from Breitbart, President Joe Biden is reportedly considering bringing Palestinians to the United States as refugees as he looks to assuage the anger he faces from anti-Semites within his own party who are angry about his administration's support for Israel in its war against Hamas. CBS News reported that several federal agencies have weighed various options for how to resettle Palestinians from Gaza. One of those proposals involves using the decades-old United States Refugee Admissions Program to welcome Palestinians to the United States who have managed to escape Gaza and enter neighboring Egypt, the report says, while another plan would get initial Palestinians out of Gaza and processing them as refugees. So, in other words, we're voluntarily bringing people into the country that have vowed to kill us. Fascinating, my friends, but just another example of Joe Biden's absolute crazy, tyrannical radicalism, which is about the only way that you can describe it. Now, I'm sure Sleepy Joe has no idea what he's doing, but it's all of the people that he has surrounded himself with. And absolutely, the folks on the Biden administration staff are radicals. Many of them are activists, and a lot of them are members of groups that we've talked about on the program. All of them radicals, all of them nuts, all of them want to destroy America as we know it. And let's not forget what President Obama said, that we've got 5 days until we fundamentally transform the United States of America. Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. And one of the ways they're doing that is with illegal immigration. So back to Wyoming for a minute. There was a tremendous amount of money through COVID. Now, not as much as other states, but per capita, it was about the same as other states. And I sat there during all of this budget debate when we were divvying up all the COVID funds, and I'm telling you, my friends, they were spending money on stuff that wasn't even tied on anything that wasn't tied down. The ridiculous part of all this is that a representative from Campbell County, listen to this. So he used that as an opportunity to expose how spendthrift Wyoming is. And what he wanted to do was have a plaque made to be placed at the University of Wyoming Law School. And on the plaque, it was going to say, "This building paid for by Wyoming Coal." And I think if I'm not mistaken, the plaque was supposed to be no bigger than 5x7. So a small card. And I think the grand total of it, what he wanted was $500. And they wouldn't spend money on that, but they spent money on just about anything else. And what they did spend money on is teachers. According to the Cowboys, Trotsky Wolfson, 1,000 plus Wyoming teaching jobs could disappear as COVID money runs out. First of all of those teachers were already paid for. Yeah, Wyoming's block grant. The truth is, we pay about $20,000 per student each and every year in the state of Wyoming for their education. $19,700. Let me give you a comparison. Our neighbor to the east, South Dakota, spends about $9,000 per student, and interestingly enough, their test scores are higher. Yeah, I know, crazy. So anyway, Wyoming is spending a tremendous amount of money, all of which is supposed to be spent on teachers. But during COVID, we dumped a whole crap load of money back into the system, and that money the spigot has been turned off, and we're no longer spending money on that. So, according to Trotsky, although the teaching positions were never guaranteed as anything more than temporary, Cheyenne parent Megan Hesser is deeply bothered that teachers paid with COVID-19 grant money are being cut in their children's school district. It's just really frustrating, quoting here, because they saw the need for extra support for kids who were struggling to read, she said, about why more teachers were temporarily hired. It's just really frustrating that we've had these positions for 2 and 3 years, and they didn't prioritize ways to maintain these positions. It's difficult to say exactly how many COVID-funded teaching positions will be going away in Wyoming's public schools, but it's likely far more than 1,000. According to the Wyoming Department of Education, 2,477.4 positions were funded through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER, during the pandemic. To make these positions permanent, individual school districts would have to continue funding them with their own money. First of all, school districts don't have their own money. It's your money. Yeah, my friends, absolutely your money. The school district doesn't have any money of its own. It's all tax dollars. Secondly, they've already got the money to pay for all of those teachers that they need, according to the block grant. But what Wyoming schools do is, for example, the block grant doesn't mandate that they spend money in any one particular way. What they do say, however, is that we're going to suggest that you hire, say, 50 teachers. Well, school districts across the state look at that number and they say, why don't we just hire 40 teachers and we'll take that money to pay for the teachers and spend it on administration. And that's what they do. It has resulted in an excess of 800 teachers in Wyoming that you and I are paying for that do not exist. That's right, my friends. They don't exist at all. So, all this COVID money is going away, and school districts are going to have to fund teachers with the money that they already get. Keep in mind, though, that they've been paid 2 times over for the teachers that were hired. Superintendent of Public Instruction, Megan Degenfelder, said that the decision on whether to keep positions must be made at the district level. When asked if she believes school districts should find ways to keep the positions, Degenfelder responded that the federal government has always maintained that these funds would be temporary. That's how Natrona County School Board Chairman Kevin Christopherson said he looks at the issue, and said the people hired for these roles were warned that they would be temporary. It was foretold that they were only for a couple of years, he said, and they were told they would only exist as long as the money is there. Christofferson said the money paid for temporary nursing, psychology, and virtual schooling positions in the district. Although many of the positions are being cut, he said a few of them are being kept. Regardless, we're way too top heavy in our education system, and the bills that we pay absolutely prove it. Without a doubt, my friends, we are funding education well beyond our means. And interestingly enough, the education budget goes up every single year about $200 million. Every biennium it goes up $200 million without the legislature having to do anything. It's what they call escalators, and it's supposedly to account for inflation and all of those things. But think about that. $100 million each and every year, and we still have people that are saying we need more money. Absolutely ridiculous. More after the break.
It's not my sound. It's not. I'm not a girl. That's what you know. It's going to
You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a selection of better news, entertainment, and commentary than right here on the Independence Network, with great voices like Joey Carenti from Just Blame Joey, Ken Pendergraft from The Ramble Room, Tom Kelly from Wide Right Turn, and the lovely Christine from The Hair Affair. And of course, my program, Cowboy State Politics, Wyoming's most listened to political program. Also, don't forget to check out the article section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. It's absolutely true, my friends. You got to be thankful each and every day for the talents that the good Lord gave you, the big man upstairs. And I, my friends, am executing my host duties without question each and every day, even though we have some bumps in the road every once in a while. From the Washington Examiner, the United States seeks to reassure allies that they don't need nuclear weapons. And I quote, the Biden administration is working to reassure allies that they can continue to rely on the United States to deter nuclear-armed adversaries and need not acquire their own nuclear weapons. The only question I have, my friends, is, how did that work out for Ukraine? Because Ukraine did have a lot of nuclear weapons, and the United States convinced the Ukraine to give them up. And now look at the situation that they're in. And I quote, we are determined to take the necessary steps to buttress this message of partnership and under the nuclear umbrella. And I think that has been successful in South Korea. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell said Wednesday at the Hudson Institute, quote, we have an existing bilateral dialogue with Japan on nuclear deterrence, and I believe that we will be taking steps in time to have also trilateral engagements on these topics as well. Those trilateral discussions would extend a theme of American efforts to network the foreign and security policies of Japan and North Korea to Indo-Pacific states, blah, 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 blah. The truth is, nobody trusts the United States anymore under President Joe Biden. We have proven ourselves to be feckless, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, simply because our president, Sleepy Joe Biden, has been wrong on every single foreign policy decision that he's ever made. Let us not forget that it was Joe Biden who said that we should not have killed Osama bin Laden. Yeah, it was Joe Biden that stupidly said we're going to pull out of Afghanistan and immediately let the Taliban take over a country that we had spent $1 trillion, or more than $1 trillion trying to defend. Joe Biden has been wrong on everything. And so when the Biden administration is trying to convince countries that they don't need nuclear deterrence, there's a whole long history of what that guy has done that says you shouldn't listen to anything that comes out of their mouth because they've been continually wrong all of the time in every case. It's without question, my friends. The reliability of that commitment has come into question for several reasons. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, not the least of all, as Campbell acknowledged. Russian President Vladimir Putin and other prominent officials have invoked Moscow's nuclear arsenal throughout the conflict, with the apparent intent of deterring United States intervention and discouraging Western powers from providing advanced weaponry to Ukraine. Quote, a Russia that threatens nuclear use openly created real anxieties that they do not see a gap between conventional operations and potential small battlefield uses of nuclear weapons. That's deeply concerning, Campbell said, not just to the United States, but to other nations. But don't worry, we'll protect you. We'll prevent Russia from invading your country. How did that work out? The truth is, my friends, that and this is something that the Biden administration, either they implicitly already know or they don't know, but there is evil in the world, my friends. There are regimes that do want world domination, that do want to see the destruction of other countries, and most of the time it's Israel and the United States. Until you accept that premise that there is evil in the world, you're not going to be able to create any sort of lasting peace or anything. Now, let's get in the Wayback Machine and go look at President Trump. For 4 years, we had a president that did not get us into a war that had questionable reasons from the very beginning. For 4 years, we didn't get ourselves involved in another war. And still, nobody really started another one either, because strength comes from military might and the possibility that you might use it. Deterrence through strength, peace through strength, my friends. That's something that liberals across this country don't understand, and they never have. That one of the reasons why the United States needs a gigantic military, and one that is the most powerful on the face of the planet, is to deter people like Vladimir Putin from invading countries. And one of the ways that other countries protect themselves is with nuclear weapons. If you're armed to the teeth, nobody's going to attack you because you'll wipe them out. And think about Iran. Now, Iran is the chief sponsor of terror across the world. One of the reasons we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon is because we wouldn't have any deterrence for them in the future. And one of the reasons they don't act all that much, I mean, they did attack Israel, but let's be honest, it was kind of a propaganda campaign, wag the dog sort of thing, even though those missiles could have done a lot of damage in Israel. They weren't meant to. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's absolutely wrong. But one of the reasons why you don't see Iran acting on its own is because they know that other countries could wipe them out, namely Israel, a nuclear armed nation. So for the Biden administration to try to tell other countries that don't worry about it, we'll protect you, it's absolutely bullcrap, and they shouldn't believe a word that comes out of their mouth. Now, here's a shocking one that probably, I'm sure, never occurred to you. But there are some homeless people that tried to claim in the Supreme Court. Now, first of all, I'd like to know how a homeless person was able to get their case before the Supreme Court. It takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of lawyers first. And to pay a bunch of lawyers, you need a lot of money, something of which homeless people generally don't have. So really, this is other advocacy groups that paid for this lawsuit that on behalf of homeless people. So it's not the homeless folks that's saying they have a right to vagrancy, but apparently they don't really. In an article from the Washington Examiner entitled, "There is no Eighth Amendment right to vagrancy," and I quote, "Oral argument for the Supreme Court this week," and I think this was last week, showed that why it is nonsense to claim that anti-vagrancy laws violate the Constitution's Eighth Amendment provision against cruel and unusual punishment. Indeed, in the vernacular sense of the word, what is cruel and unusual is a judicial edict that says law-abiding citizens must put up with public spaces featuring major health hazards, including even the plague. Yet that's what some lower courts bizarrely say citizens must do. By any normal reading of the Eighth Amendment is intended to forbid overly harsh penalties, but not determine what sorts of conduct can or can't be outlawed. The Eighth Amendment just says no cruel and unusual punishment. Unfortunately, far left U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit misapplied earlier precedent by issuing a sweeping injunction saying local governments must not clear homeless people from sleeping on public property unless governments supply enough specific indoor space for them. So, in other words, unless your local government is going to house all of these migrants who either for whatever reason can't get a job and pay for their own welfare, the state has to do that for them. So, I mean, this is another attempt to push the Constitution into places that it was never meant to be. Our founders never intended there to be any sort of right to vagrancy or the right to be homeless or whatever else that you want to say. The truth is that right doesn't exist, and the Supreme Court absolutely affirmed that. So you don't have a right to be homeless, and you don't have a right to sleep in a park if you are. You need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go get yourself a job. It's no more complicated than that, my friends, and it never was. What liberals try to do with the Constitution all the time is to twist it and stretch it to fit whatever cause celeb they have for the day. A great example of that is Roe v. Wade. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say anything about abortion. You don't have a right to abortion. Nobody ever has a right to kill another innocent human being. But since the 1970s, that ruling stood until the Supreme Court said, nope, there's no right to abortion in there anywhere in the Constitution. Now, let's go back to the cruel and unusual punishment clause, because I think this is interesting. There are some things in the Constitution that are very, very specific. For example, the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. Pretty darn specific, means you can't make any law forbidding the private ownership and bearing of firearms. That's really clear, no question about it, even though politicians try to stretch that stretch it into all sorts of contortions to make it mean something that it doesn't. And then there are other phrases in the Constitution that are pretty vague. One of those is cruel and unusual punishment. What the heck does that mean? Well, the reason it's vague is our founders knew that over time, our idea of what was cruel and unusual would change. Perhaps at the time, tarring and feathering somebody was not cruel and unusual, but now maybe it is. Perhaps at some point we'll decide that the electric chair is cruel and unusual. But we don't right now. Some states use the electric chair for executions. But the point is that our founders were smart enough to know that our nation was going to change, that our beliefs and things were going to change. And so they wanted the Constitution to cover all of those things, not change with it, to cover all of those things, which is why the phrase cruel and unusual punishment exists in the Constitution, because it has to cover a broad range of things. However, And being homeless and not getting a job and not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is not a punishment. That's a choice, either by you choosing for yourself or somebody else choosing for you. Perhaps you have some mental condition. But even then, there are public services available where you could get some help with all of those things. You just have to take advantage of them. But the state, or we, the people, are under no obligation to provide anyone else housing. That's their responsibility. With rights come responsibilities. And in fact, if you don't have the personal responsibility along with your liberties, you don't have your liberties at all. I mean, it's like removing the foundation out from under them. This goes to the same thing that I say all the time about the difference between equality and equity. They don't mean the same thing. Equality means equality of opportunity. That means that everybody has the same chance to succeed across the board, but it's up to you to do it. That takes personal responsibility. Equity is an economic term. For example, if you pay down your home loan $50,000, then you have $50,000 worth of equity in it that you could borrow against. So the two are completely distinct. They're two completely different terms, and they shouldn't be used in tandem. But what the left tries to do all of the time is stretch those terms to mean whatever it is that they want. Well, we burned through another busy broadcast day on the program. You can watch a replay at the website or on YouTube. And shortly after I get done with this, I'll upload it to the radio station so you can listen to it there at the 3 o'clock hour. Pardon our dust for a little bit. We're still kind of getting things organized, doing two things at once, simulcasting to the website. So thank you for your grace, and we'll talk again tomorrow. I'm David Iverson. This is Cowboy State Politics.